Hello, everyone. It's Dr. B. I want to begin today talking about Chapter 3, Part 4. We've just, some of you have already done Chapter 3, Part 3, at least I hope so, because it really is necessary to do it before engaging with Part 4. So I want to remind you, my guidebook for teens and young adults. I want to be me, but I don't know who I am. And the workbook that I'm using to teach theory in the guidebook plus the exercises in the workbook. So again, chapter 3, part 3 was quite challenging. I want to put on a timer because I tend to go very long and I'm trying to avoid that. So give me 1 second to set that up. Here we go. Okay. So I aim for 15 minutes, but I've never yet managed to stay at 15 minutes. But I think 15 minutes is ideal to get a hold of a concept that I'm teaching. And then, take the time, if you have the books, to look at the exercises and do them for yourself. If you don't have the books, I don't think you get as much out of it, but you at least get the idea of what it's like and how to work it, and you can certainly play the tapes as many times as you would like. So in chapter 3, we talked about managing yourself. We started out with hygiene and taking care of your environment in your home, and went on to talk about being responsible for your education with homework and attending to work at school, and then talked a little bit about managing yourself at home so as to stay safe and to keep your brothers and sisters safe if you are in charge of taking care of them. We then went on to talk about managing one's emotional health. And you may think, what does that mean? But yet it is important. And there's more and more talk about it on TV and Facebook and everywhere. But mental health, knowing oneself, being aware of how one is in life, how one feels, how one acts, how one reacts to things is very important. So we took almost the whole 15, 20 minutes talking about how to feel, to become more aware of your emotions, how to realize how you feel them so that you recognize them, and also how do you behave when you are feeling those emotions. And I went all the way from happy to frustrated, angry, afraid, the usual emotions, even including panic, which would be extreme fear. Not sure that belongs in there, but I did include it. So the reason for doing all this is to become more familiar with yourself, with the way you handle things, and also to realize that you can learn to manage the emotions, which doesn't mean, shut them down. That's not what I mean. Or how do we say we control emotions? I had so many clients tell me, I want to learn to control emotions. Well, we don't control emotions, and we mustn't control emotions because they're essential. They are what tells us how we feel about things. So they are very important to be aware of. What we want to do, and which is essential as we grow up, is to learn to manage our behavior in response to the emotions. These are two very different things. To accept the emotions, to recognize them, to accept them for what they are, and then to choose the behavior that we want to express as a result, or despite the emotion. It really depends. And I want to give you I've been thinking while preparing for this that actually children learn very young to manage their behavior, particularly if they are discouraged from doing things or encouraged. A child, let's say a 3-year-old, is frustrated, he doesn't get what he wants, he can scream, he can cry, he can throw a temper tantrum, and depending on how it's going to be received, on how it works, he will learn to either keep that behavior up or stop it. I want to use for an example that some children are not allowed to express frustration. They get threatened. We may call that abuse, but whatever it is, they quickly learn not to express frustration, not to throw temper tantrums, or sometimes children, when they're angry, they strike at the adult. They try to hit the adult, and that is usually not allowed without any abuse, but it's not allowed to hit the adult. So he might get a talking to saying, no, you may not hit me. I know you're frustrated, but you may not hit me. Or, worse, and they're bordering on abuse, he may get hit if he hits an adult. And adults hit much harder than children. So he would quickly learn not to. So these are not very positive lessons, really, but they do happen quite a bit. And so I thought I would bring them up here. But what I'm really talking about here is the behavior that you choose to engage in depending on your situation. So on page 49, and I'm going to share that with you on the screen, I used an example. This is workbook. So this were some of you may remember how I responded to how I behave when I'm happy, but these are just reactions. I may smile, I may jump up and down, I may clap my hands, I may scream, I may hide my mouth or my whole face. Some people hide their face if they're really happy. They're so moved, they don't want to feel kind of vulnerable. So I did talk about that, and I think I probably wish I had I had written, how do you react? And that here I would have written, how do you react? That would have been more accurate because these are not choices that you make. These are simply reactions. So, but I want to talk about choosing. How do you, in this exercise, I talked actually about reactions, not actions, but reactions, and then how I would feel about them. So I put it in the first person so you can do it for yourself, but I do it for myself as an example. So the example is one of the school bullies is coming towards me. What am I expecting? I'm certainly not very happy about it. How might I react? How do I then feel about it? Let's explore the possibilities. So my first reaction was that I would try to hide. I'm a coward. I'm not really wanting to fight with the bully or stand up for myself. So I would feel embarrassed if I hid. So that certainly is a choice. But let's take the other one. I would feel afraid if I decided not to hide, but to take on the bully, whatever that meant. For girls, it's usually verbal, it's not physical, but I would have to respond to the bully, and I would be kind of afraid that I wouldn't be up to it. I would feel frustrated if I got all ready to, stand my ground, and then the bully just ended up not paying any attention to me. Well, yeah, I would feel frustrated, relieved maybe, but also frustrated because I wanted to show that I could stand my ground. And I would feel angry if the bully didn't come up to me and start hassling me about whatever it is. And I would feel angry if she dismissed my response. I'm standing my ground, but she's, kind of just making fun of it. I think I would get angrier, like, damn it, take me seriously. So these are trying to do it. So I certainly suggest that you do something like that, and maybe you add to it. And so this is all about being aware. I didn't have much experience with bullies in my life, but I did have one experience with one bully, and I was actually not any of those. Well, I was frustrated because I didn't respond. I didn't say anything. I was kind of uh, taken aback. I was not anticipating that she would be bullying me, and I just didn't say anything. Um, I want to share with you, my parents were kind of bullies, so I did have experience with bullies, but I was learned not to. I was taught very early on not to respond, just to act like I don't care, nothing's happened. So I probably uh, kept that reaction. Um, Bullies don't keep up if you look like you don't care. You just don't respond to it. And that is what I had learned at home. So, but when we want to actually deliberately act, choose our behavior in a situation, and I'm usually talking about negative situations, but they can be positive situations too. We can be happy because we're getting a raise, but we don't want to be jumping up and down at work because we would look ridiculous. So we just say thank you very much, and we act like that's very nice, but it's not the end all in the world. So, measuring our reaction to things, our action that we choose in reaction to things is very important. So it's important, and this is a very difficult thing to do, and I list it here because it's the time to start, but it takes a whole lifetime to learn how to manage one's behavior in different situations, particularly when there is a emotional component, which there usually is. Whether it's at work or in friendly relationships or with a husband, a wife, a girlfriend, boyfriend, parents, schoolmates. There's always some emotion involved. So this is why this is so important. And I want to add, this is something I say in the guidebook, is those people who learn to manage their behavior, to behave deliberately are the winners. It is very difficult to do. In the movies, they always know exactly how to answer, but that's because someone is writing the script. And so life is much easier for them. But we don't always know how to respond. So one of the traditional things is to just take that little bit of time, and we say, I will count to 10. Nobody says you have to respond immediately. You can count to 10. You can take a moment of silence to hear your own inner voice. Do I fight him? Do I not fight him? What do I say? What do I want to say? What will I say? Sometimes there's a conflict. I want to say something really aggressive, but I realize that that's going to get me in a worse situation. So what do I actually say? Do I say anything? I don't want to let others push my buttons, in other words, to just end up being reacting. So I need to make choices. I don't want to get into further trouble, maybe, or maybe I do. The person may be stronger than me. And that, certainly if he's the one who initiates the aggression, then he's on top to begin. So how do you then regain the balance? You can determine that you won't be bullied. You may determine one way to not be bullied is to walk away. So they say, oh, you're a coward. Oh, you say what you want. I do what I choose to do. Sometimes just shrug your shoulders and walk away. I need to remember what's important to me. It's not just to be manipulated to have my buttons pushed. So take a moment to choose your behavior. I'm taking charge of this situation. I can look her or him in the eye, shrug my shoulders, and walk away. I can tell he's itching for a fight, but I don't have to fight, verbally or physically. I can tell her, that I understand. I can even give them a hug, say, I understand you're upset, and would you like a hug? That's usually pretty disarming. It may sound ridiculous, and that's okay. It may just put you back in charge. You want to be in charge of your behavior, in charge of the situation. I can say that I will think about what she said. So, exercise 4 is learning to act instead of reacting, what I've just been talking about. Can you think of a time when you just reacted to an event? How did it work out? Were you okay with how things turned out? Maybe yes, maybe not. If not, what do you wish you had done? How could you have chosen that behavior? You know, a lot of times people will say something to us, and then we particularly as adults, somebody says something nasty, but at the time we cannot think of just the perfect answer, and we walk away feeling angry and annoyed, and we may wish we could have thought about the right thing to do or to say. How could we have chosen that behavior? And I know that some of you will say, well, it's too late anyway, but it's not too late because we can start preparing for the next time. So can you think of a time when you took the time to choose your behavior in responding to someone? What was going on? What did you choose to do? How did it turn out? Did you feel good about yourself and about the way it turned out? So which of the behaviors mentioned above, and I mean these, would you like to try? What do you think it will work for you? So these are difficult things, and I'm going to share quickly something that happened to me as an adult at work, where I was taking over a job for someone else, and I'm guessing he was not happy about not having been given the job, and he had been in as a trainee for a year, and he was being replaced by me. I was going to be a trainee, but I imagined that he wished he would have stayed on as a full-time job, but that was not my problem or my responsibility. Anyway, he chose to introduce me to a room full of maybe 5 or 6 assistants who were part of the administrative staff, and he introduced me in a way that was a real put down and made me look like I was a lightweight, or I was feeling so angry, and I didn't want to say anything. In my mind, I figured I will show these people who I am as I am on the job, and they will respect me. But I was really angry with him, but I chose not to say anything at the time. I felt it would just embarrass me if I was defending myself. So I went home and was pretty angry and decided that I certainly wasn't going to give him the chance to do something like that again. We were going to have some overlap, so he was still going to be there. So a couple of days later, I think we had like 2 weeks overlap, which would have been a lot of chances to say something. So a couple of days later, I managed to corner him and ask him to come into my workspace. And I very clearly said, don't you ever pull that kind of crap again. And he walked away. He didn't say anything, and he, of course, never did. So I felt I had taken my time to, and of course, I always got the respect from the administrative staff. They were very kind and helpful, and I think they respected me for not getting pulled into having to defend myself or prove myself. So, but this was a time when I felt really good about it. There were other times when I didn't feel so good, but I gave myself the time to decide on what I was going to do and how I was going to do it, and maybe even when. So this is something that you can learn from as well. And, you do not have to respond right then and there. You can take charge of the situation. You can walk away. You can say, I'm going to think about it. That's very disarming. Somebody says nasty, you say, well, give me time. I will think about it. I'll get back to you. You know, people, people wouldn't know what to do with that. Oh, I understand your attitude, but that's okay. I'll think about it. And that's disarming because they can't engage you. And that's your goal is not to get engaged in what you don't want to be engaged in and to maintain control of your behavior, your choices, not your emotions, because I sure was absolutely furious at this guy. But that was okay. So in the next session, we're going to learn how to take care of ourselves when we are furious and upset and angry and maybe sad. And that is called self-soothing. And I will talk about that in the very next session. So goodbye for now. I'm going to come back to kind of stop sharing and come back to say goodbye. And I hope that you enjoyed it. And we will continue very shortly. Thank you. Bye-bye.